going back to the 30s. We had milkman who delivered milk every other day. We had an iceman who would deliver ice for our ice box, which was the only source of refrigeration. We had a coal man that we would buy coal from. We had a laundry man. When my father had money, then my mother would send out the laundry. Otherwise, then she would wash by hand in a wash tub or pots on the stove. Let's see, what else? We got mail twice a day, and it was only a penny for the postcard and 3 cents for a letter. Then we also had friends who worked for Oscar Myers, who would deliver sausages for us, long 4 or 5 pound rolls of sausage. We got by with that. We had another friend who worked for the Bowman Dairy Company. Bowman and Borden, who would leave us eggs and butter and dairy products for us for nothing. That's the way we got through the Depression. And then, let's see.
Let's talk about the fiesta.
Oh, then we had big highlight of our whole year was our Easter, September fiesta, Italian feast, that was held every year by societies, different societies, that Italian societies.
Different dialects.
Like,
for example, the Sicilians had a society.
Yeah, or clubs. I'll just say clubs. And they put on this big fiesta every year, and they would. We had Italian sandwiches and sausage sandwiches, roast beef, and they cooked it all themselves on big barbecue things. Drums and stuff like that, and all kinds of different pastries and games. And they would have a parade on a Sunday afternoon.
Which was the climax?
Well, at the end of it, they had fireworks too, and then they had a long march, maybe 3 miles. At least 3 miles, where some women and men would walk barefooted over these streets of Chicago, over the rails from the streetcars and all that, in Thanksgiving, for a promise that they made they would do this if God granted them a certain wish, whether it was a child's illness was cured or something like that. And just like they portrayed it in The Godfather, the movie The Godfather, they had the feast where they pinned money on the saints. But none of the money went to the church. We learned later on it went to the different societies. They just made a donation to the church for the use of the statue. And at the end of the evening, they would string a wire between 2 tall buildings on either side of the street. And young kids were picked, depending on how prominent their father was in these societies. And they would portray an angel, and they would pull them across, and they would have this saying that I can remember 50, 60 years later, because the girl, one of my neighbors, was an angel one year, and she had to practice and practice and practice, so I would practice with her. I should say that one?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Silenzio, silenzio, fermati, fermati, salute questo popolo, viva Santa Maria, which means silence, silence. All you people, listen.
Salute to St. Mary.
Salute questo popolo, viva Santa Maria. Yeah. Hail to St. Mary, something like that. And that was the highlight. And then they had huge fireworks. I think one year they had some kid got burned with fireworks or something. Anyway, very
probably spray.
Yeah, and that was a highlight. Everybody got a new dress. Plus, at the beginning of school, and it seemed that everybody got a new dress purposely to wear to the feast, and then they wore it for school. And I was given $1, and that was to last the weekend. It started Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and to use on either rides or food, whatever you decided to use it for. And once in a while, if you ran out too soon, you beg your father for another quarter or 50 cents, or sometimes a relative would come and they'd give you some money. Let's see. Pick it up. Oh, let's see. Okay, I said that. Santa will be fair and saying something. And another thing that we used to do is that anybody got married in the neighborhood, and they had a reception, whether it was in a hall or whatever, we would crash the wedding just to get hot roast beef sandwiches and the cookies and watch the dancing. And until somebody noticed that you didn't belong there, you stayed as long as you could. But we wanted purposely to go for the roast beef sandwiches. That was a big highlight too. And let's see. And like I said, when we had to be home every night by 9 o'clock, because in front of our house, and then we would play games. 3 feet in the mud pile, run sheepy run, red rover, can I come over? 3 feet in the buck, how many fingers up? The boys used to like that game.
Well, it would never mix.
Yeah, we mixed.
Well,
yeah.
not very.
Then we had Mrs. Lehman was our candy store. She was very good to our family. My mother would send spaghetti over, and she would send a loaf of bread. To me, it was like a pound cake, but it was their bread. We would go to the store for her because she couldn't get out to get groceries because she was in charge of the store. And she always gave us a treat. And we used to go get a nickel bottle of pop. The big bottle that we only paid a nickel for. Cream soda and root beer. Those were the things we got every night.
You should also say that the store was located right across from school.
Yeah, she was a very good woman. And if she liked you, which she did with Dad, she used to have little candies, and if it was a pink center, you got a nickel candy bar, you know. And when you go to point it, if she liked you, you don't want that one. You don't want that one. Take that one. So that we would get a candy bar. You know, she was real good. And we used to get an ice cream cone for, I think, 3 cents. And double one for a nickel, right? Was that what it came to about? Yeah. And
2 scoops for a nickel.
Yeah, 2 scoops for a nickel. Let's see.
You mentioned a streetcar costs 3 cents.
Yeah. Oh, and then another grocery store we had was ran by a German woman, and she used to slice the ham by hand, real thin. The 5-pound ham, we slice it real thin, and we'd get maybe a nickel's worth or a dime's worth for sandwiches. And coffee they ground by hand, and like we do today, some of these places. My brother Nins used to make money selling papers. We used to have our papers paper boy, the Pfister boys, George and Babe would come over and in the summer with a wagon and sell newspapers for a nickel every Sunday. And that's the only time we got a newspaper, was on a Sunday. We couldn't afford it any more than that. Babe was killed in the war.
Yeah, he was with Patton outfit in Germany.
Yeah. No, okay, I don't know where he was, but anyway. And Sunday morning paper, get your paper. And that's how we got it. And sometimes if there was something, like there was a granary fire in Chicago, a real big, or stockyard. No. Stockyard and a granary fire. And then they would call out the headline, and everybody would come out to see what was happening, and those who could afford it bought the paper, and those who didn't shared them with everybody else. So what happened. And my brother Lynn sold papers. He used to go and get coal around the railroad tracks and bring it home for us. And I remember when I graduated grammar school, he had $1 and he gave it to my mother, and we were supposed to go downtown with a show. And so my mother gave me the $1, but didn't put a limit on it, what I was supposed to spend. So when I came home, she asked me for any change left, and I said, I don't have it. What'd you do with it? I went to show and had a sundae afterwards, and must have had candy. I blew the whole buck, and that was disastrous because that was money that was taken away from food for us. I can remember that very, very clearly. We never wore slacks to school, never wore shorts to school. We had dresses sometimes donated by the teachers, or neighbors outgrew it, and we passed it along to each other. And my mother sometimes made me dresses out of her old dresses. She would cut out a newspaper pattern from one of my dresses, and she would sew them all by hand because we had no sewing machine. That's what she used to do. And let's see. Yeah. And my first big thing with us was we used to have roller skates that were tied, that were fastened to your shoes with straps. And the highlight of or when we could afford, is when we came with a key, that it would, would grip our shoes rather than having straps on. That was a big deal, right? Yeah, I think that's about, well, that's my brother Nin. He made a boxcar out of a 10-gallon can and some old wheels, and I was pushing him one time, and I got the scar on my knee because there was a raw edge on it. And then otherwise, they took roller skates with a 2x4 and attached them to the 2x4 and had like a hand cart. And that's, like today they use skateboarding, and we used to go. That's what we used to do, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we either dresses or skirts to school, and that's about all. I can't hear, what I think of. Oh, in order to go to show, sometime on Saturdays, we used to pick up junk. Paper bottles, paper, or any kind of glass bottles.
Newspaper?
Newspaper and cans and old clothes, and take them to the junkyard. And we would get maybe a nickel or a dime or a quarter if we really had a lot of stuff that we had saved. And that would give us the money to go to show, because Jeanette was a nickel. Ideal was a nickel.
For the first show, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. The Plaza was a little more. That was a little more classy. I don't know what, but anyway, those shows. And that's the way we got the money to go to shows. And our church, another form of entertainment for us, which was free, or I don't know, maybe it wasn't free. Well, they used to put on stage plays.
Yeah, very nominal fee.
Yeah, they used to put on stage plays. And just like The Godfather, when the guy is saying, Mama, I don't know that they sang Mama, but that's all Italian. The mission church was an Italian mission church, and everything was done in Italian. Masses were said in Italian. Didn't understand very much because it was all in Italian.
Some form of entertainment for us.
Yeah, it was a big thing, yeah. What were the people's, well, doesn't matter who they were. I guess that's it, honey. I can't think of anything. Well, the 1930s anyway.
We want to mention the time that we got the news that the war was over. And then I had to be a part of the occupation.
In Japan? Well, we should make a whole series of the war. I got the 30s over, but I can't think of anything else growing up. Can you?
No.
I can check it out. Not that it was born. That was different. He went in service in April?
April of 1943.
43. No, 44. And went to the East Coast and trained for the amphibious.
Well, I got my basic training at Great Lakes training in Illinois, and then after boot training, let me back up. I had to have 10 teeth removed because they were some form decayed, and they were not suitable for service. So they removed 10 teeth. Most of my bottom ones are all out, and they made some fillings in on the top. And after boot training, we went to Norfolk, Virginia, where they had a amphibious base, and that's where we had our training for amphibious. And I recall one of our recreation leaders was Tony Zale, who was the middleweight champion of the world, and that was a big thing for us to be under his supervision insofar as our physical fitness training was concerned. I think about that took about 10 weeks of training, and then after
In
that,
October, you left for
in October, then we went
San Francisco.
we went cross country on a cruise ship, and that was 10 miserable days.
Got to San Francisco.
We got to San Francisco,
And you stayed, I think, until after the first of the year?
Oh, just about the first of the year, and then we departed San Francisco. Well, first we did a lot of training on the West Coast, just amphibious training back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And after we departed San Francisco to go to Pearl Harbor, we took a load of some war material to bring over to Pearl Harbor at that time. And we did more training at Pearl Harbor. It seemed that's all we were doing was training. And then we loaded up with the 3rd Marine Division. We had a regiment of 3rd Marine landing. We brought them aboard ship.
They used to steal the hell out of you guys.
Oh, well, no, not these.
Oh.
Not this. And we, from Pearl Harbor, we went to, what do we call it, Marianas, Saipan, Guam, Waikana, places like that. And we did very intensive training now. We were, we all knew it was something big's going to come up, like an invasion.
When did they transfer you to Guam because you had a collapse of some sort? Was that then or after the war? After Okinawa or before?
It was after.
Oh, okay. All right.
It was after. So, again, we knew, we felt something big was coming up. They give us limited information, just enough for us what we needed.
Still, but wow.
You know, all different rumors back and forth, but no one knew exactly outside of the commanding officers. So, on this Easter Sunday morning,
April 1st. Was it April 1st or April 3rd?
well, I recall Easter Sunday morning, 8 o'clock. Well, that prior night we got in-depth briefing on what was going on and what's expected and the number of ships and we were 5th wave.
Don't talk about it, huh? Forget it. Pass it up. Pass it up. Okay, I'm sorry. So anyway, he sent me a telegram when he got back to the States and said, "Hi, hon, home at last." And he was going straight to Great Lakes, and which was where he was inducted. So he was discharged from there. Came home on the L train. We only lived a half a block from the station, so he just walked home with his duffel bag and knocked on the door, and there he was. I had kept the Christmas tree up. He got home about in the 20s in January something, 20s or something. And we gave him his Christmas presents. And then I decided I would send my daughter Sandy upstairs to go visit his girlfriend. But she didn't want to go, but we forced her to go so that we could have a few intimate moments by ourselves. And then my sister-in-law, I had asked my brother-in-law to keep my sister-in-law and mother-in-law home give us an hour or two by ourselves so we could become reacquainted. And they got very angry about that, but they did stay away. So then I finally called about 4 o'clock that it was okay for them to come over. And, oh, we can come over now? Blah, blah, blah. My sister-in-law was really ticked off about it. But anyway, they came over, and we had dinner, and then a bunch of fellas came over to see Frank, and they all got looped, they all got drunk, and Frank is on a little rocking chair, fighting the war all over again on the rocking chair. He sat on Charlie's lap, him and Charlie were sitting on a chair, and drunk as hell. Charlie went upstairs and got mistaken where the bathroom was, and he went to the bathroom in the corner of his bedroom. Now, I don't think we knew Charlie before the war, before we moved there. Anyway,
We knew the family.
We knew the family, but they had lived in the old neighborhood and then moved up, bought this building there. And it was a transition because for 2 years, I had a single life, which was the only single life I had. Made all the decisions, made my own decisions, and of course, overseen by my in-laws, which they were very good to me. I wouldn't have been able to handle it living by myself. Let's see, where was I going? So there was a transit period that we had problems. And he said, did we talk about him sending the money home? Mm-hmm. Not of it. He sent money home. Every time he wrote a letter, he would send me money home. He made it either by washing clothes for the other fellas or by gambling. He was a good card player. And I saved it, put it in the post office, and when he came home, we had $1,000. And when he came home, the post office you can only have one signature on the card. So we split 500 in his name, 500 in my name. I was pregnant, April or May. He came home one day and he says, "Hon, I need $350 today, fast." "What for?" He wouldn't tell me what for. He says, "I just need the money, just give me the money." And I said, "Well, go take it out of the post office then. Don't bother me with it." He says, "I don't have any money in my name. You have to take it out of yours." He had blown all of his $500 and took the $250 of mine, or $350 of mine. So I got really ticked off at him, and I told him, I packed his clothes for him, and I told him to get out. I could live without him for 2 years. I can get a little without him if he's going to gamble the money away. So he took the clothes and he went and sat in Lincoln Park all night. And at 6 o'clock the next morning, he knocked on the door and said to me, "Nobody's going to throw me out of my house." So he came home and we made up. He still continued to gamble and play the horses, but not to too much extent because we didn't have the money. And but it was still tight. Where were you working? Did you go to Latrobe?
No, yeah.
We went back to Latrobe, but of course all the defense work was gone. And there wasn't really that much work, so he wasn't making as much money as he did during the war. When he worked there for about a year after the war and would make $250 a week, which was a hell of a lot of money. And I would give him an allowance, and he would come back same day and say, "I need $100 or I need $50," because he was gambling. And we never had any money. That was a lot of money for us in those days, so I didn't care. But anyway, he gambled a lot.
I was a compulsive gambler.
He was a compulsive gambler. Finally, in October, he started to get sick. He got rheumatic fever, and I took care of him at home. And I was about 9 months pregnant, and he had problems of relieving himself, and I carried him on my back to the bathroom. And it bothered him. He got very tearful about it. But anyway, he was helped. So then finally, Dr. Jonas told him that we would have to take him put him in a hospital, that he needed more care than what I could give him. And my mother-in-law didn't want him to go to the VA hospital, which was out in Hillside or Hillsdale or whatever, out of Hillside, Illinois, where the Veterans Hospital was too far. I had to take a streetcar, the L train, another bus in order to get to the VA hospital.
It was Hines, Illinois.
Hines, Illinois. Okay.
The hospital was named Hines.
Hines
Veterans Hospital.
So, my mother-in-law, we put him in Election Brothers Hospital in Chicago, and he was there for 2 weeks, and my mother-in-law, money ran out. We had no hospitalization, and it cost $150 for those 2 weeks for him to be in the hospital. And our doctor kept saying, Dr. Jones said, you have to put him in the VA hospital. He's a veteran, he deserves it. So,
And it required a
long recuperation period. So I think just before Christmas, he went into the VA hospital, and he was there. And while he was there, the Red Cross ladies came and asked him if he needed any help. And he says, no, I don't, but my family needs help. And that was very hard for him to do because his mother instilled on him, we don't take money from anybody, never was on relief. She was a widow. She raised her 4 children, was working herself, sewing pants. And the thought of somebody having to support his family hit him really hard. So anyway, they came out and saw that I was taken care of by my in-laws, so I was living with them at the time because I was near giving birth. And they didn't do much for me while I was living with them, but they did give me a layette, asked me if I needed a buggy or a crib or anything. They would have furnished it, but I had those things. So I didn't need them. And I said, asked me how I was going to pay for my hospital stay. And I said I had $150 for it. And that would pay the doctor, and it would pay my hospital stay.
10 days.
10 days. So I hadn't visited him for a long time because of the distance and the traveling distance, and so
And give him birth.
And I was, ready to give birth, and everybody advised me not to make the trip because of the inclement weather that we had in Chicago. But anyway, I finally asked my father to take me on a Sunday. I insisted that he take me. And I went and I saw him, and he was quite ill. At that time, his excessive nose bleeding were over, which I didn't know anything about. My in-laws kept that from me. They had to pack him in ice because he had so much bleeding. So the next morning I gave birth to my son. So I called up the hospital, and the gray ladies came around and told you that you have an 8.5-pound son. And they put him in a wheelchair. The first time he got up, put him in a wheelchair, and he wheeled around and gave him cigars to everybody because he had a boy. So he came home. No, he was still in the hospital, and the Red Cross supported me. They made out a budget for me, gave me entertainment funds, travel funds, cod liver oil, shoes, everything that I needed.
Fuel oil.
We sat down and what my rent was, everything.
Fuel oil.
Huh?
Fuel oil.
Fuel oil, paid for my fuel oil, and one time all my fuel oil dumped into the dirt in the basement from a high wind. And the next day I had another 150 gallons, which was about a $45, $15 for a barrel. Very, very good to us. They went to work to try and get a pension for him, or back hospitalization. Disability, because he had just changed a job and only worked there 1 month, and they refused to give him any money because he wasn't working there long enough. They fought for that. And I think in April or May, took that long, I finally got a check for $950, and I offered to give it to them, and they did not need it. They would not take it from me. And they said, you use the money staying on the same budget you did for all these months, and when that money is gone and your husband still isn't working, we will support you again. Just remember them when they had a drive to make a donation, which was good. Dr. Jonas also pushed for us to go for a veteran's pension because his theory was he had it while he was he contacted it while he was in service. And he sent letters. The Red Cross pursued all of his buddies aboard ship, stating the fact that he was taken off of the ship and sent to Guam in a state of collapse. But this was wartime, and exhaustion. was heat exhaustion is what they put down.
That's what they say.
They put down his problem was heat exhaustion. This was wartime. You know, they didn't have the facilities.
Well,
and
there's
they
a lot of
didn't
action going on.
Huh?
There's a lot of action.
a lot of action, so they could not focus on one fella's problems. So he came home, and he was home about 2 weeks, and he got a relapse, had to go back to the hospital. And he came home, and he was pretty good, and I